Thank you, everyone. I think, can you hear me? I always give this talk online, so I always ask it if you can hear me. So today I'm going to be talking about Python 3.10. Welcome to Pattern Matching. My name is Laysa Uchoa. A little bit about me. I really like Python, and I happen to live in the city of Munich. So this has taken me to organize PyLadies Munich chapter. I also really like open source, and my company, they work with open source and databases, so they manage infrastructure. The name is Ivan. We actually have a booth here. I'll be there, maybe, and you can say hi. You can also find me on Twitter if you want to follow me, or yes, whatever. So a little bit about how this talk is structured. I will talk about Python 3.10, and in general, I will talk about pattern matching. Every time there is a heart, maybe I'm comparing two codes, and you know the one with heart has pattern matching. And I'll give my final thoughts. So what happened in Python 3.10? Actually, in the release of Python 3.10, there was a party. Pablo Galindo is the release manager for Python 3.10, and there was a release party. And it was quite interesting. A lot of the Python core developers were invited to this online party, and also the community was invited to get feedback about the features. And yeah, I just found it very cool. I don't think there was a release party for other releases anyway. I found it really nice. One thing that happened with Python 3.10, so when this kind of releases are done, I also want to say that this, for the party, was quite interesting because you could see how software such as a Python release, such important release, are done in real life, like in the tech area. So there is the Python RC, the developer version, the beta and alpha, and so on. So before it's released to production, you can already test and make sure that your open source code supports the Python 3.10, even before the production one is released. So that's quite interesting. And at the same time, a lot of people, they do wait until other maintainers provide support and so on. But if everybody waits, then nobody updates. So here we could see that in this Twitter, the person was just commenting that, yeah, it's still less than 10% of all the important packages from PyPy, they still do not support Python 3.10. So this is actually something that if you are willing to contribute to open source, this is something that you can do it in some projects. You can offer support in different versions of Python. One thing that why people don't do that is because there are breaking chains. So if you are running your latest version of Python, you would be run the Python 3.9.7, and then you're gonna jump for Python 3.10, which is actually two-digit minor version, and you have no idea how many things can break it in between. So I tried to update it, one of the packages, and actually I saw a lot of issues, compatibility, and so on. So I see that it's not so smooth sometimes. But what I want to tell you today is that really worth it. Python 3.10 has something called like beta error messages. And here is just a comment how this kind of little improvements actually means a lot. And a lot of people are looking forward, for example, here you can see we have a production. Danke. So, action now. So we are talking about meaningful messages. One thing that people really like, they really like beta error messages. And this kind of meaningful messages, I already saw in other languages that kind of, you make a mistake and you kind of get very specific tips how to fix it. And this was something that it was missing in Python for a long time. Part of this is because this parsing were not automated, so I was listening yesterday, the kind of the code they had to maintain was like 8,000 lines of no automated code to make the messages. So that's why they tried to automate it, and they were very successful, and now you can have this kind of message that actually guide you where you need to fix your code. And it's quite important, especially for beginners, because when you're starting in a language, the first thing you find is errors. And if you start to get just errors, and you have always this frustration, maybe you'll not feel so good about the language. But that's something that actually for beginners in Python, I think it will open up, and more people start using and sticking to Python. what is that new? I already told you there is this beta error messages, and I heard that Python 3.11, it will be even better error messages. I'm curious to know what is about it. If you're also curious, there are some podcasts with Pablo Galin. He's explaining how does it work, how does this work. And also interesting to know, if you are a release manager of a Python release, you actually are a release manager for the next 5 years. Because you have all the security bugs that you have to fix and you have to be responsible. So it's not just the party and it's over. Actually, you have to continue. And all this talk, I took this information from the Python official documentation, especially the PEP 636, which covered the structure pattern matching tutorial. And you can find it online. I really recommend it. I know it's a lot of documentation, but actually it's good that so it covers everything, and you can learn a lot from it. So what is it new in Python 3.10? We had pattern matching, otherwise I wouldn't be talking here. We had context manager, and we had beta error message and type union operator. These are just some of the things. I will not be covering everything, of course, I will just cover pattern matching, but it was asked out. Which features do you like? Which features more excited about? I want to ask you today, which feature would be you more excited about? So, about pattern matching. Are you excited about pattern matching? If you're not, I would ask you to leave. Context manager, I don't know. Are there some context manager fans here? There is one person, or maybe 3, maybe 4. OK, it's getting more allies now. Beta error message, I think is also something good. I think nobody wants to be looking so much in the code if it already can give you. And type union operator. Yeah, there's some typing people here. So yeah, we're not going to be covering beta error messages. I'm sure that would give a great talk, but we're going to be talking about the structural pattern matching. Pattern matching is something that it was already in some languages. If you are coming from Scala or C and so on, you already saw some things like pattern matching there. And there are things that it's used there, and Python it's kind of nice that it was developed after, because we have all those languages with nice ways to do pattern matching that we get inspiration from. So pattern matching in programming, you would think more about either it will or it will not be a match. It's different from dating applications because you could have a lot of matches there, and actually you end up without any match. And it's also different from pattern recognition, because in pattern recognition, when you have an image that you're trying to recognize and do some labeling on that, you would have some sort of threshold. For example, if 9% of this image matches to a cat, it will be a cat, so to say. So it's a bit different. In pattern matching, we're really going to stick out in the sense that it will or it will not be a match. And we already had some sort of pattern matching in Python, some primitive pattern matching. So for example, here, x, y equals to 1, 2. So Python is smart enough to associate the number x to the 1 to do the assignment, and the number y to 2. So that's kind of cool. If you like try and accept, you may also find that here that is some sort of primitive pattern matching as well. You can actually have try, and you can have different accepts, and only one, your objective is to match one of these exceptions and to run some code inside. So there's some sort of primitive things that were already there. OK, so now we're going to come back about actually what's pattern matching in Python. So I was doing a lot of interviews some years ago, and I was also interviewing people from my company. And for some reason, there was always the question, if you play video game. For some reason, people wanted that have a coworker and also someone to play video game after the job. I wonder if someone here plays video game. At the time of this talk, I didn't play video games, but I started to play, but I don't know, actually, yeah. Why did you play video game in your free time? You really like screens. So we're going to be using a game to try to understand, because I know a lot of people play video game, but if you didn't play video game, it's also OK. I think you're going to try to follow here. Don't worry. if I don't say this word correct, if there is German speakers, maybe they will correct me after. And I think that is one of the challenges of today's talk, is to say the word Steckspielzeug. Gut gemacht. Sehr gut. So this kind of a game, you have an object and you try to match in these holes, and only the ones who has exactly the form will be entered, so will be matched. So that is why I took this game, because I think it's a perfect example of pattern matching. So I'm going to be using this as an example. Here is just a code how to get started with pattern matching for beginners. So we have here form, which is a string called triangle, and we're going to be looking for trying to match this string in every case of this. So you have circle, square, triangle. So you can see that it will use, behind the scenes, it's going to be used comparison, and we're going to be matching with the triangle. So actually, that's what you see in the output. Here is just, I wanted to just bring up the naming, because when you are looking at the documentation, you stumble up in these names, and sometimes it's like, well, what is it, like a wildcard, or what is it, a subject they are talking? So a subject is something that you're going to be testing against against some patterns. And you have here a subject would be triangle in this case, that is a variable called form. And the pattern would be every statement of case has some sort of pattern that you want to match it with. And the wildcard, well, the wildcard is when you don't match with anything and you still want to do something with your code. So it's like the else of the if else. So here's just also like to give you like a flow, how it works. So you have a match of a subject, and you're going to be trying to match with each case of this. So you have the case equals to a pattern. If it's true, you're going to execute the block, and you're going to leave it. And if it's false, you're going to continue looking for your match. This seems like real life. And so you're going to continue. Maybe you find it, maybe you not. It also happens. So here, I want to highlight some things not to do it. And I want to explain why you should not do it, not because it's obviously, but only because it's like also the way of thinking about pattern matching. So when you think about pattern matching, you should think in some sort of parameter. So your specific case should come in beginning. And if you are going through, you can open up for cases that englobe the beginning, so to say. If you try to use the wildcard in the beginning, this means like you are accepting everything. So it would be like you open up this box, and everything comes inside. So it's actually not what you want. And this gives you like some idea about how pattern matching should be think in the way of programming. So you should always go from the specific case to the broadest ones. If it was not clear, you should not do it. Here we have with and without it. As I said before, I will be using a heart if I have comparisons here. So in this side where there is a heart, you have the list, and this list is going to be your subject, and you're going to be looking for the patterns and trying to find a match. As you can see here, it's very easy to understand, okay, the first case is a single list, and you are looking for one element in the list, which is triangle. Does it match? A triangle is stored. In the second one, we have already two elements here. The first one is triangle, the second one is object. Do I need to know object? No. Actually, in this case, what is called binding. So we are binding whatever is in the second position of the list to this variable called object. And then we can reuse in the execution block. This is only exists in that context here. After you cannot find object and try to print or something like this. And then there is the, oh, I see there is a mistake here. What? I'm missing 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But yeah, the wildcard would be the ones like no matches are found, and it would englobe this one. If you try to do the same without the pattern matching, you would be using if, elif, and else statements. And this can be a bit nasty because you start to get verbose. You're going to start to like, I have to access the second element of the list. I have to do a comparison. I have to also see the length of the list. Is there elements? I have to save the second element or the element that you want has object. I have to save in a variable. So you see that when you start to have more conditions, it's harder for you to just look at the code and say, OK, that's how it works. So this becomes more verbose. Therefore, you can add more bugs. But actually, the bug is in the first one. But I run it before it's really indentation formatting. I also run some tests with time IT, so you can see like how fast it runs with and without it. So this is with it, and this is without matching. I found it slightly fast with, but not something that I would say, okay, it's much faster. I guess not. But I tried to use some like exhaustion code, so I give a match that would not match with anything and would go to the wildcard or to the else statement. And this I could see a more difference. Like without match, with match it was 2 times faster, a little bit like that. So it could be, I think, faster. I think the reason that it's faster is because you don't need to do so many conditionals. Some stuff's already optimized because of pattern matching, so it could run faster. But if someone has ideas, please tell me. I think that's why. There is also something here. You can just, I don't know, compare an integer and do the pattern matching with, I guess, this integer, for example, numbers here. But in this case, behind the scenes, as I say, is using the equal statement. And in this case, I still would use the equal statement, in my opinion, because only because I like it more explicit. So if you have number equals 0, for me, it's still more explicit in the case 0. But I think it depends of what you feel more comfortable. And also because I think pattern matching is still something that we are trying to use or we are getting used to it. So yes, but I see in some cases really helps. This is really cool. Pattern matching, you can have guard. Don't be scared. It's just like list comprehension, so to say, because you have here the case, which you're going to be matching with, but only if something else is happening. So we have it here, if size is lower or equals to 10, or if size is higher to 10. So we're going to do the matching only if the condition is already true. So this is basically what guard is. Means in this context of pattern matching. This is other thing that I found is really cool. It's called composable patterns. So you can think about like a matryoshka. You can have a doll inside a doll inside a doll inside a doll. So you can have a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern. And it can get more, you already see that we are going from more complicated kind of ways. So you can combine composable pattern with guard and with things that we already saw. But what is composable pattern? As I say, it's a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern. So here, we have that we want the first element to be direction, but the second element of the list, we don't care. We want to be more flexible. We have some sort of options, but we want to be more flexible. It will be bottom or top or left or right, and we're going to be binding this, whatever was here, to the side because we don't know which would be. And we're going to be using the execution block. So this is basically what composable pattern is, and you can use it in your code. You can also match objects. This is really cool, I think, because it's not something that I saw, for example, in C. Because here in Python, you can take an object, and you can tell, OK, I want that the color is equal to red, or the color is equal to pink, and it will do the pattern matching for you. So you don't need to explicitly say all the attributes. You can just say the ones that you are interested in. Time for the photo. Sorry. Yeah, so you're going to be checking the subject. So here, what I want to tell you also is that this syntax is very similar to like instantiate an object, but I don't want that you take it as wrong. What is happening behind the scenes is actually checking if this element is an instance of circle, And inside the instance, there is element call or attribute color. Is it equals to red? And then it will execute, for example, and so on and so forth. So although it's similar, it's not the same. And you will see some tricky cases that I will show you. So there is dictionary pattern match. I'm really sorry. I had this talk in November, and I had snow in Munich. And guess what? It's still snowing. So I reused the photo. But the year is the last year. So if you work in web development, I know you work with JSON. So you have dictionary, side dictionary, side dictionaries, dictionaries, dictionary. So one thing I want to show you is that pattern matching can also be used in dictionaries. So you can take a dictionary and you can do the matching with it. And I found it really cool because you don't need to explicitly tell all the keys in the dictionary. You can just go for the ones that you are looking at, some pattern with it, and you can just put it here. So for example, here I have actually year and location, but when I throw the matching, I just look for year. I just want to see if it's year 2022. Well, not there yet. I also feel we're still in 2021, to be honest. But here's the location, Munich, and so on. So you don't need to explicitly say all the keys. So I think it makes it easier when you're doing comparisons with pattern or with dictionaries, when you work with dictionaries. This is a problem I found in the Stack Overflow. I really like this problem, so that's why I bring it here. The person wanted to understand, OK, I have all these dictionaries, and one of the keys is called ID, and I have matchme, matchme-full, matchme-bar, and matchme, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to find all the match that has matchme. So this was the question. Can you do this with pattern matching? The answer is yes. Imagine I say no, right? And then we move forward. No, the answer is yes. So I'll show you how to solve this question with pattern matching. So you have it here. You would be checking, you would be looking for the ID, and you would be binding this to the variable called x, and you're going to be doing a guard on it. Yeah. A guard on it. And here you have, when x starts with matchme, you would do, so we have the answer here. So he wants to know, or she wants to know, all the instances that start with matchme. How can you do that? You use guard. So we have it here. We're going to be binding to x, and we're going to be checking if the x starts with matchme. And we don't need to say everything, right? But you see how cool is this? Because we are kind of like mixing things from Python standard library that we use, and we can use in guard. So this is a great example. So I hope you can use it if you have this question. Oh, it's already answered, by the way. I also had questions when I was using, and this was something that I didn't understood, and I think it will be confusing for people when you start using pattern matching. I had a dictionary with a key size, and I tried to match with an empty dictionary. Don't ask me why I tried. I was really just trying. But I had this question, and I posted on Stack Overflow, Twitter, and someone answered for me, like, how does it work? So I did it with a dictionary here, and I was able to match with an empty dictionary. You have to agree with me, this is confusing. And I took a tuple, and I tried to match with an empty tuple. Of course, it did not match. So I was confused why does it work with dictionary, why does not work with tuples. If you try with a class and you have an empty class or just some object of it, it will also match. And the reason is that dictionaries and classes in that sense, they work a bit different with pattern matching. So actually, with tuple, you cannot able to match, but yes, with dictionaries. Why? The question, right? Because behind the scenes, the first check that is done is like, is it an instance of a dictionary? It is. So we will have already one case here. So that's why it matches with the empty dictionary. False. Dun, 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 dun. If, else, pattern match, or whatever. I think, in my opinion, I really like pattern matching. I saw a lot of people excited, especially people who are doing Rust. They just love pattern matching. So I think, why not to give it a chance? Actually, it's free. So I would download Python 3.10, really try out pattern matching. But I agree that some stuff you can still do with if-else. You need to think about your future self. And if it's easier to read and easy to go through, why not to give it a try? So I want to ask you, are you going to give it a try to pattern matching? Please! Yes, those are my thoughts about it. If you have questions, actually, I'm not giving the slides, but I do have a thread which explains in more depth how pattern matching works with more examples, and you can find the slides around this thread. Thank you so much. I would love to catch up with all of you. Do we have time? Thank you.
So thank you so much. It's very interesting. I was like basically like absorbed by your talk, and I forget that I have to host the Q&A. But anyway, so there's like questions flying in. So I would try to pick one. So
wow, that's really interesting. Are you asking questions on the internet?
Yes, we were asking questions on the internet. So so this question is asking, are there any tools to check if your pattern matching is exhaustive?
I don't know what does it mean, but I would say, for example, if it's exhausted, you would either use the wildcard, or if you don't do anything, you will have non-has in the end. But if it's a tool outside Python, I'm not so sure. Because it depends. You can put in your execution block, okay, like in the end, okay, there's nothing happens. You can do some action and see, okay, it exhausted. So it depends on how you structure, but you can put as a last case an exhaustion code to check. I would do it like this.
Yeah, another question. What is the reason of using case underscore instead of else?
This is interesting. Is there any Python core developer who can tell me? Because this is just a decision of the language. But I think in the context of pattern matching, from what I read, some stuffs are, they don't want to confuse the reserved words. So else is kind of already reserved for if and else. And they try to leave it outside. That's why they use the wildcard. But if there is another reason behind, I could not say for sure, because it was a decision design. But one interesting thing is also like matching also, because if you use regex, you have also match, right? But those words are different. In the matching, in the case pattern matching context, it works for pattern matching. And in the regex, it works for regex. So this kind of reserved words.
Yeah, so does MyPy support pattern matching already?
MyPy?
Yes.
I don't know. But I think you can just go and see if it supports Python 3.10. If it does support Python 3.10, it can be used. Whether the code is changed, I'm not a maintainer of MyPy, so it will be hard for me to see.
Yeah, can you pattern match on function arguments?
Yes.
Yes, is the answer. Yeah. Simple. So this is the last question that I see. Does pattern matching rely on equality operator so that objects have to implement as the dunder equal dunder method to work properly in pattern matching?
So under the hood is actually using equals in some places, and when you're working with objects, I say you are actually using the instance of. So I would say yes for the answer, because it's how it is implemented. But in this case, it's faster because it's optimized for better performance and so on.
Yes is the answer again. So
Yes.
Thank you so much. Really enjoy your talk, and thank you. And I'm sure that you will find her around the booth. So
thank you so much.